A couple years ago, I saw Shane and Hannah from one of my most favorite YouTube channels travel to Prague. I was excited to see what they will think about the city we guide in, but it ended up to be a total disaster. Shane and Hannah could not reach most of the must-see sites and really struggled with the accessibility here. Then, a few weeks ago, some of you commented that you want us to make a video about whether Prague is wheelchair accessible. So, in today's video, we're gonna find out if Prague is wheelchair accessible. If you're a wheelchair user, we're gonna give you some useful tips on the sites that are accessible in Prague. We're gonna explain how to use public transport, like metro and trams. So keep on watching. And if by any chance you're a person who is in charge of the institutions that I'm gonna complain about, or maybe you're some powerful politician, please start taking notes, because I have a lot to tell you. In this video, we will visit some of major sites of Prague's historic city center. Starting in the New Town and Wenceslas Square, we'll make our way down to the Old Town and Old Town Hall. Then we will see if it's easy to cross Charles Bridge. And finally, we will show you how to visit Prague Castle and Petrin Hill if you are visiting Prague on a wheelchair. We are starting at the top of the Wenceslas Square for a reason. Wenceslas Square has two accessible metro stations, Museum at the top of the square and Můstek at the bottom of the square. When you are using the metro, you have to go to the front of the train because there is a ramp there. There are plenty of signs that will point you to a correct elevator that will bring you to the top of the square. These elevators are very spacious and accessible. They will bring you either to the top of the square or towards the bottom. Sadly, not all the metro stations in Prague are accessible. To find out if the metro stop is accessible or not, all you need to do is to take a look at the map of the metro stations. If there is a little icon of the wheelchair user at the metro station mark, it means it is accessible. Basically, out of all metro stations in the city center of Prague, only Museum, Můstek, Národní třída and main train station are accessible. They're planning to make all the metro stops accessible by the year 2028. Well, the clock is ticking. Museum station will bring you straight to the building of the National Museum. We actually visited it before on our channel. It was one of the first videos that we filmed. You can check it out. But how accessible is the National Museum? One thing to know before your visit is that after you exit the metro elevators, you will not go to the historical building of the National Museum. You will go to the building right next to it. So how do you get there? When you're standing in front of the National Museum, you cross the road here on the curb cuts, and then you keep going straight up until you see this big glass building. This is where the accessible entrance to the National Museum is located. You go in, you can get your ticket there, and then through the underground passage you will enter this historical building. Okay, let's continue down the Wenceslas Square. We don't recommend taking the middle of the square to go all the way down, because at times it is not accessible at all. For example, here, where there are no curb cuts. Better go to the pedestrian roads on the side of the square. Wenceslas Square will be going through a huge reconstruction, so hopefully they will make it more accessible in the future. If not, come back to this video years later and shame them in the comments. Old Town is famous for narrow, winding streets, and a lot of them are paved with these really large cobblestones. We call them cat's heads. And these are not the only danger that you can have when you're moving through the Old Town. The biggest danger, in my opinion, is the bollards or the boundary stones, because they're a really tripping hazard for people who look up too much to admire Prague architecture. So when you are in the Old Town, we don't recommend taking the sidewalks. We actually recommend taking the main roads, even though they are paved with these large cobblestones. So be careful when you are exploring this part of the Old Town. to the Old Town Square. Here we're going to be talking about this building, which is called Old Town Hall, that claims to have an accessible lookout tower. It is accessible partially, but you should know a couple of things before you visit. First of all, how do you actually get inside of the building? You have to walk a little bit further to take the curb cut to get on the sidewalk in front of the building. Then you have to come to this door and ring a bell, because there is a little doorstep, so they have to bring out a portable ramp for you. When you are inside, you have to get a ticket and then go to the third floor where the entrance to the tower is located. Over there are some more steps where they will help you out with your wheelchair. And if your wheelchair is not narrow enough to fit through this door, they will provide another one that they should have available. After that, you will take the elevator all the way to the top of the tower. But this is not it, guys, because you're not actually able to go outside to the kind of walkway in the tower, because we think it's too narrow. We don't think that every wheelchair will fit there. Hardly any wheelchair will fit there. So you will have to see the view behind the glass there, which is kind of a bummer. The rest of what the ticket here includes, which is the guided tour of the interiors, is not accessible at all. Okay, let's check out the Jewish Quarter. Prague Jewish Museum has multiple buildings which are situated 5 minutes max away from each other. So which ones are accessible? Meisel Synagogue is accessible. Klaus Synagogue is only accessible on the first floor, but the assistance is needed because there are steps to get in there. Old Jewish Cemetery is sadly only accessible from the exit at the Klaus Synagogue, but you cannot actually go around the cemetery because the paths there are too narrow. Spanish Synagogue is accessible. Ceremonial Hall, not accessible. Pinkas Synagogue, not accessible. Old New Synagogue, not accessible. Well, that is a little bit disappointing, because most of the exhibitions in the Jewish Museum will be not accessible. Luckily, every person with a disability card will get a significantly cheaper entrance to these sites, so at least you are not losing money on admission fees. Alright, let's check out Charles Bridge. Charles Bridge itself is paved with large cobblestones, which make the way across it very bumpy. Maybe that's why not so many people on wheelchairs actually go across it, and prefer crossing bridges right next to it. If you want to do that as well, either come back to Manis Bridge or use this passage to get to Legi Bridge. And just a little tip for you guys, if you do need to go further down this way, please don't go alongside the road. Take the passage over here, because that is accessible, which is not so picturesque but more comfortable for the wheelchair users. Alright, after you get to the other side of the river, you can visit Prague Castle and Petrin Hill. Both of these places require taking a tram. We don't recommend trying to get there by going uphill. Let's talk about using a tram if you are on a wheelchair. Prague Castle can be accessed by the tram number 22. Most trams on this route are accessible. To check if the tram that you want to take is accessible or not, you can either look at the schedule on the tram stop and see if there is a wheelchair icon next to the time of your tram, or through the app IDOS. When the tram arrives to the stop, you can signal to the tram driver that you need his assistance, and they will get out and unfold the ramp for you. To visit Prague Castle, we recommend getting off at the stop called Pražský hrad, or Prague Castle, which is very close to the northern entrance to the castle, or Pohořelice stop located further away. Their website says that most exhibitions in the Prague Castle are accessible, which I don't think is completely true, like the Golden Lane, which has a really large and uneven cobblestones that make it hard to move around. Plus, the exhibitions there, like the Archer's Corridor and the houses, are not accessible, they're just too tiny. St. Vitus Cathedral is accessible for the most part. If you go with a ticket to the back of the cathedral, I don't think you will be able to go around the tomb of St. John of Nepomuk, because again, the walkway around it is too narrow. But you can go through the middle of the cathedral, no problem. Old Royal Palace is partially accessible, same as St. George's Basilica, small rooms upstairs that are not accessible. The gardens of the Prague Castle are accessible for the most part. Up next, Petrin Hill. Petrin Hill is a big area that consists of multiple gardens. Is it accessible though? Most people would say that the easiest way to get to the top of the hill is to take the funicular, but I'm gonna warn you, it is not accessible. There are steps to go to the funicular and to get out of the stations. I don't know if this information is written anywhere, but I'm just saying it here hoping that Prague Transportation Company would consider making funicular accessible, because nobody wants to climb that hill. And we are not gonna. We are gonna use public transport again. To go to the top of Petrin Hill, you can also take the tram number 22 and get off at the same stop Pohorzelec. We've discovered that the easiest way to get to the top of the hill would be going on the side of Strahov Monastery, because there's a road that is relatively smooth and it will take you around 10 minutes to reach the top of the hill with the Petrin Tower and anything you want to see there. But we also wanted to test how easy it is to actually reach the top of the hill if you go through the Petrin Park. We went slightly downhill here, below Strahov Monastery, and started walking through the park. This is where we were just now. You go down the hill this way, here's the curb cut. For the small part of the road you will have to go on the bigger cobblestones, but I promise it's worth it, because over here you can already go to the right side and enter Petrin Gardens, Petrin Park. And here the road is already very smooth, so here you should have no problem. And oh boy, was it a long walk. Almost there, guys, but we've kind of realized that this way is only okay to take if you have a lot of time. So if you need to get up to Petrin Hill in like 10-15 minutes, or if you only have an hour for the visit to this park, this way is not ideal. But if you have like half of the day and you just want to see some nature and also nice views of Prague city center, definitely take this path. And when you see the hunger wall, you know that you're almost there. Václav, why is hunger wall called hunger wall? You're not gonna say it. He's not saying it, guys. He just said it's such a nice joke.
It's called hunger wall because the climb is so high that when you see it, you are already hungry. Is that funny? I don't think
it is funny. It is funny. Write in the comments, guys, if you found the joke funny. In the end, it took us around 30 minutes to reach the top of Petrin Hill. Well, when I was researching this video, I found this article that was supposed to be helpful for the wheelchair users, and they suggested that to get to Petrin Hill, you have to first go to Strahov Stadium. But then they did mention that some parts of the road to get from the stadium to here were kind of not okay if you are by yourself. Okay, guys, we made it to our last stop, Petrin Tower, or the miniature Eiffel Tower of Prague. And what about this tower? Is it accessible? According to the website of the Petrin Tower, it is only accessible on the second level of the tower. But upon talking to some of the staff, we found out the Petrin Tower should be fully accessible. Still don't know who to believe though. Throughout this video, we were always trying to reconfirm with the staff of some of these attractions about the accessibility. And sadly, most people that work in these places were really confused about it. They would always say that we have to ask somebody, we don't know, except maybe the National Museum staff. So I would actually recommend you guys calling before that. Most of them spoke English, and I think they will be able to help you over the phone and maybe get ready for you before your actual visit. I know that's something that they should be ready for anyway, and it's kind of weird to call them and ask them to be prepared, because that's their job. But unfortunately, this is the state of affairs right now. Okay guys, and that's a wrap. We are not gonna go up the TV tower, I wanted to say the Eiffel Tower, because we're already tired out of our mind, and I'm not gonna climb any more steps today, so we are gonna go home. The last thing that I wanted to tell you though is that if you have a disability ID card, you should definitely bring it, because you will get some cheaper admission fees or zero admission fees if you have that card. Thank you for watching, and see you in our next video. Bye!